and welcome to Psych Sessions, conversations about teaching and stuff. I'm Eric Landrum, along with Garth Neufeld, your podcast hosts. As the name implies, we center on conversations about teaching, but we often veer into other interesting topics, which is the end stuff. This is episode number 58, where Garth had the opportunity to interview Jim Diaz-Granados from the American Psychological Association in Washington, D.C. Now, before you hear the interview, please allow me to share some listening tips and some of my favorite moments. And as we typically do, please subscribe to us on iTunes or Apple Podcasts because that helps us pop in the search results. And while you're there, your ratings will always help us too. So what a fun interview to listen to. Oh my goodness, the diversity of experiences and the wide-ranging interests that Jim has. You know, I've been really fortunate to be at APA events over the years, and I think in the past 2 years, at one event in particular, Jim got there late, and he was unfortunately stuck, and I really do mean stuck, sitting next to me at some long banquet table, and I just had a blast talking with him, and so I'm so pleased that Garth had a chance to kind of corner him. Probably after a long day of multiple meetings, it sounded like, probably at APA in DC, and it was lovely. And so I don't know where to start. It starts with HGTV in Waco, Texas, and Jim talks about his background. He comes out of Baylor University. He talks about his APA work. He talks about the APA initiatives in terms of looking at master's degree education. You got to work in hashtag Ragnar. I mean, really, if you listen to this thing, that's actually a big part of it. And the health and fitness and endurance and the long range running. I mean, since Jim was a kid with his father in Connecticut, 5:30 in the morning, I mean, it really is part of his DNA by now. I love the leadership conversation that Garth and Jim have, both about the joy in identifying it and the importance of mentoring and being mentored. And, you know, there are just so many just delightful moments. I love how they circle back a couple times to the Google, and I'm just going to let you discover that on your own. They diagnosed a disease, a couple of symptoms that add to a disease. The symptoms are can't say no, plus will do it well. We probably have, I don't know if that's leadershipitis or successful leadershipitis. There's probably some Latin phrase that we could attach to that. Jim touched on that he's a first-generation college student, although I think there were 4 sibs altogether. Mom and dad are from South America, from Colombia, but all 4 sibs are wildly successful. I think a couple of PhDs, a social worker, a lawyer in there. I mean, just an amazing family, just an amazing tribute to the parents who just knew that their kids were going to go to college, and they certainly did. And then, of course, on top of all that, Jim was a lead singer in a couple of bands. And, one band told him, I believe it was in college, as he walked away, I think I've got the name here somewhere, Circuit, the guys who were in Circuit said, you're going to regret this move. So hopefully in his position at APA, hopefully he feels like he made a good choice. Those of us who get to work with him and benefit from his work, I know Circuit probably could have made it big, but we're glad that he is where he is. So I hope that you enjoy the interview with Jim.
All right, this is Garth. I am at the American Psychological Association, and I am joined by Jim Diaz-Granados, who is the Chief Education Officer. Is that right?
That is correct.
Yes, at the American Psychological Association. How long have you been in this job?
A little over 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And before this, you spent some time in a classroom, I understand.
I did. I spent about 18 years at Baylor University.
Okay.
And 2 years before that, I was adjuncting at the College of Charleston. That's where I did my postdoc at MUSC, Medical University of South Carolina. I did my postdoc there. So yeah. It was fun.
So I know Baylor from obviously the college basketball tournament, but that's one of my only associations with Baylor. So right. Where is Baylor?
Baylor is in Waco, Texas. Should I ask you what you think about when you hear Waco, Texas?
Yeah, and I'm just going to turn off my phone for because apparently it is on because I can hear it. So that was a long time. That was before you were in Waco, though, right?
I had nothing to do with that.
You
nothing to do with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
You weren't a
I
part
wanna
of
be
it.
on record. I had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, but that's what it's known for, right?
It
Like
is,
Waco,
I know, it's
does
very
it
sad.
does it kind of stay in the minds of people?
It does,
Yeah.
obviously.
I
You
mean,
know,
even insiders.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
it does in a different way. I mean,
Yep.
people kind of look at it kind of like a spooky. That's what happened there.
Right.
But people in Waco really think it's a shame because in reality, that whole thing happened about 30 minutes outside of Waco. But Waco is the largest city, and so that's where all the news media set up. So they would, I'm Jim Brown from Waco, Texas, right? Signing off from Waco, Texas.
So all this fear or negative associations or weirdness associated with Waco.
It's very strange. Yeah.
Yeah, if they had any kind of tourism industry, I suspect it took a hit after
It did take a hit. Now, thank God for the Gaines, Chip and Joanna Gaines, and the show Fixer Upper on HGTV because they got my house sold in 24 hours.
Hold on. Wait, what? I couldn't tell if we were going. I couldn't tell what was happening there, but I would like you to expand on this.
So there's a show on
Yeah.
HGTV called Fixer Upper that just went viral. Everybody loves Chip and Joanna. They come in, they fix houses, and they do it all in Waco. And I will tell you that they must do it all in the winter because they dress, in jeans and cool vests and stuff, and it's not the hot Waco that we all know. And the properties are really cheap because real estate's very cheap compared to a lot of places. And so people just started flocking to Waco, and they have really taken over the downtown and have really invested a lot of money and have just really turned the place around.
So they only do the show in Waco?
They only do the show in Waco. Yeah, all the properties that they fix up and flip or they don't flip them. People, the premise of the show is, Garth, you want to buy a house? We're going to show you 3. You pick which one you want, and then we're going to turn this, this rough piece of, coal into a gem, and so they do it, and they're, she's got a line of products. They've got books, they've got everything. I mean, they have an empire now. So.
And they did this to your house?
They did not do this to my house. So the reason that my house sold so quickly is because we got caught up in that whole.
Because people are coming to Waco.
Yeah, I want to come to Waco. Waco's an awesome place to live, and so we put our house on the market. 16 hours later, we had an offer above ask, and we left.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah. So these, is this show still going?
It is.
Oh my goodness. And it's still in Waco.
It's still in Waco. Yeah.
Should I be embarrassed that I don't know about this show?
Slightly, just a little bit, just a little bit.
Okay.
But you are Canadian, right?
I am, but we
Okay.
do get cable television up in Canada.
Oh, okay.
Although it's about half Canadian programming. So, but no, I know those shows have really taken off. But so interesting to be kind of associated with a place with that kind of a history.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? I was just talking with Amy Feinberg a couple hours ago, and we were talking about how Birmingham, when you're a person from Birmingham, you have all this history with you. So when you give people the name of the place where you lived, it's the first association.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Racial tension, or Waco, Texas.
Right.
What was his name again? His name was
David Koresh.
David Koresh. That's right.
See, I'm just helping to perpetuate the negative association, but what the heck?
Do you know what? A minute ago, I knew it was David Koresh in my head, and then I forgot. But now my wife is going to give me all kinds of crap about forgetting his name because she thinks those things are really fascinating. And there's always a documentary going on about something like that.
Absolutely.
In my house.
Yeah.
So, you know what I thought we would do is maybe... well, let's start here. Maybe you can tell us what you do now, and then we can go back and figure out, what kind of led you to this place and to working with APA. And so what's your job? What are you responsible for? What's your day in and day out? Or I don't know, wherever you want to go with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So my day usually starts at the gym. No, I'm kidding. I mean, it does. I'm not kidding about that, but we won't go that granular.
We're going to your races eventually, so that's fine. It's fine.
So as Chief Education Officer, I lead the Education Directorate here at APA. And so APA's got 4 what we call content directorates. It's practice, education, science, and public interest. And so I'm one of the 4 chiefs that head those areas. And within education, we've got I've got 11 offices that I oversee, but I have incredible staff that lead all of those offices as well. So I have associate executive directors that lead those offices, right? So APA has a board of directors, whom you met today.
Yep.
Right. You were honored today with a Citizen Psychologist citation.
I was. Thank you.
Very well deserved.
Thanks.
And
yeah.
So that was great to be there for that. So we have the board of directors that is kind of the overseeing body of the association, and then the 4 content areas, and there's a couple of other areas that also have boards. And so we have the Board of Educational Affairs, the Science Directorate has the Board of Scientific Affairs, the Board for Public Interest is the Board of, oh my gosh, I don't know the acronym, but let me tell you what I don't know what the acronym
It makes me
stands
so
for.
happy that you don't know the acronym, because this is all, it's so out there for me.
But this is what I love, is that they're known as Be Happy, right?
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. So, be
Memorable.
happy.
Yeah, good.
Don't worry, be happy.
Yeah.
And then the practice is the board of practice affairs, I guess.
Okay.
So BPA. So anyway, we all have boards, and so that's what CABE and TOPS report to. So that's how that works. Yeah.
Okay. So what are some of the 11?
Yeah. So I've got I have Rena Subotnick's group, which is the Center for Psychology in Schools and Education.
Okay.
So that's the K through 12 area that's really focused on the application and promotion of psychological science directly related to teaching and learning in schools.
Okay.
And so tremendously important work in there related to teacher development, right, and teaching practices. So you may have heard of a little document called the top 20 principles.
Yeah, that comes out of that group.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And
you don't have to list all 11, by the way. I'd never do that to you.
No,
But,
okay. But just to give you a flavor, right?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then we'll go to the one that people probably have heard of but may not know that it lives here, and that's our Office of Program Consultation and Accreditation. So, not quite like David Koresh, but sometimes people have reactions to accreditation that are a little bit like that, right? And so that lives here, right?
Yeah.
And so I actually started off as my first engagement with APA actually was being a commissioner on the Commission on Accreditation, which is a decision-making body that reviews all these self-studies that graduate programs and internship programs and postdoctoral fellowships turn in for their accreditation. And the workload is tremendous, for the programs, I should acknowledge that, but certainly for the commissioners. And so I was there for 2.5 years, and then this position came open. And the story is that the workload was so much as a commissioner that I just decided to quit that and just take over the entire directorate. So,
yeah, okay.
So
So that makes sense.
So they're a hardworking group. That's all to say.
So where do we fall in, like the work that we do? Which of those 11? So Intro Psych Initiative or TOPS or CABE?
Yeah. So all those are in a fantastic office called the Office for Pre-College and Undergraduate Education.
Right.
Right. So PQ.
PQ, yep.
Yeah, and so that's led by Robin Hailstorks, and Emily Chesness is the one that is the director that is related to the high school work, and Martha Baynow is a director of the undergraduate portfolio.
Are you able to keep, because I feel like you have a pretty good handle on what happens where we, like in that group, are you able to keep all your head in all 11 areas, or is that difficult?
That's my job. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's a steep learning curve.
Right, and I remember you said you have really good people who are
I've got fantastic
helping
people.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons why I ended up taking the job. I mean, remember, I left a full professorship, right? I was full professor, department head, had an NIH-funded lab, and this thing came out of the blue. And my first reaction was I laughed when Norman Anderson, who was the former CEO, called me and said, I think you would be perfect for the job. And I just laughed and said, ha, that's funny. And he said, well, let's talk. And he said, well, let's talk. Let's keep talking about it. And I was like, yeah, sure. And he just planted the seed, and I kept thinking about it. And it took me about 4 months to decide to just make myself available for the position.
And where were you working at the time?
At Baylor.
At Baylor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you relocated and everything for this. Yeah. And you've been in this position for how many years now? 4.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. How long did it take you to get up to speed, do you feel like?
I don't know that I ever feel like I'm up to speed,
Right.
Because we're always, we're always just adding stuff, and, this is just a great group, so you can really kind of keep your foot on the pedal.
Okay.
And it's been wonderful. So my directorate's grown since I took it. We've got a Center for Learning and Career Development. We inherited the Center for Workforce Studies, and so that's spinning like a top now.
Yeah, cool stuff coming out of there.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got APAGS, the American Psychological Association for Graduate Students, is now part of the directorate, and we've got the Office for Early Career Psychologists in the office as well. And we're doing the master's accreditation, which is coming out of here. So there's just a ton of stuff that.
Yeah, I was at meetings with you guys in March, maybe, when you were talking a little bit about that.
Yeah.
And, we don't necessarily need to go into it, but it sounded really interesting, and it sounded like it was all new and fun. And
yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that was just. I mean, we won't go into it, but I just saw there was just a big, huge hole. There was high school, there was K through 12. Right, and we had undergraduate, and then we had nothing in master's, and then we kind of skipped over to doctoral, and then we have postdoctoral, and of course CE learning. We have continuing education in the directorate as well. And so I just kind of, as kind of the new guy, said, "What's going on here?
Hey, has anybody noticed this?"
Yeah, and they had noticed it. It was a long,
of course,
it was a decades long issue.
So, well, now we are going to talk about it, because I'm a master's degree holding individual.
Yes, I know that.
And so, what's the plan here?
So the plan is to set up an accreditation system for master's programs that fall under what we would call health service psychology. So those graduate programs that are training students to go out and deliver services. And so we have been completely out of that game, so to speak. And so that master space has been filled with other professions, marriage and family therapy, social work, counseling. And so, to me, it seemed like we were losing an opportunity to keep psychological science-based treatments, out of the marketplace and to help people. And I believe in psychology. I believe in our evidence base. I believe in our science. And so that was kind of my first, thought about, why aren't we here? And we didn't even have guidelines. I mean, we have the national standards for high school. We have the undergraduate guidelines 2.0 that you're very familiar with. We've got standards of accreditation for doctoral programs, internships, and postdocs. We had nothing for masters, right? And so we even the year before, I take that back. The same meeting where we started talking about master's accreditation, the council passed the first set of educational guidelines for master's programs. And those guidelines are for master's programs writ large. So for the general, so it's kind of like saying, hey, if you've got a master's program in psychology, you might want to think about having this kind of a curriculum, these kinds of outcomes, and so on. It's not prescribing anything. It's just kind of giving advice.
Right. So if I have a master's program, if I'm in charge of that at my institution, I can say we adhere to the APA guidelines for a master's degree.
Yeah.
Okay.
It should give you some help, some guidance.
Yeah. And so that's out already?
Those are out. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we just published them earlier this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And people can find those on the website?
On the website.
Okay.
Just use Google.
Just use Google.
Yeah.
Google it.
Yeah. Or use the Google, like some people say.
Use the Google. That's what my mom would say. Use the Google. I use the Google. Okay. So it seems to me from an outsider, whenever I see you, you're always in meetings. So I feel like you're in meetings a lot. Is that true?
I think because when you see me,
I'm in meetings.
You're in meetings, and it's
okay.
like a meeting.
It's a meeting
meeting
weekend.
Extravaganza,
Yes.
like I like to call it.
Yeah.
Because we've got the national standards here today.
Mm-hmm.
We've got you guys here today with the Introductory Psychology Initiative, and we've got the board of directors here. Last weekend we had the ethics task force, we had the master's blueprint task force, we had the science student council meeting. We had like 4, 5, 6 different groups that were in town.
Do you work a lot of weekends then?
We do work a lot of weekends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, nobody told me that when I took the job. They said, there's
Every once in a while.
They said, there's some weekend work, and I thought, oh yeah, I know weekend work. In my robe, my slippers, doing a little email. It's
Not
like
so
yeah,
much.
yeah. So no, yeah, we do a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And does that give you some flexibility at other times, or are you just in the office 7 days a week?
There's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I love it. So, it's one of those things. It's just like when I was at Baylor,
Yep.
and teaching students and running my lab and teaching students in the lab. I just never looked at the clock. I was never looking at the clock going, gee, can I go home now?
Right.
It was more like my lovely wife, Lenny, that would say, hon, are you thinking about coming home?
Right.
Should I bring you some food?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you do find time for extracurricular things, right?
I do.
And what are you up to these days?
Well, these days, kind of obsessed with Ragnar Trail Runs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that. You explained it to me last time I saw you, but
maybe I'll get a little kickback from Ragnar here. So let me know if if you get some some activity here from the podcast.
Yeah. Hashtag Ragnar. Got it.
Exactly. So Ragnar Trail Run is very quickly. It's 3 loops. Each loop is anywhere between 5 to 8 miles long, and you do it with a team of 8, and you basically run for as long as it takes you to run those loops 24 times. And so each team member runs it 3 times. Each team member runs one of those 3, all 3 loops, right? And so they're green loop, yellow loop, red loop. That means difficulty. And so you camp. You camp out. You start on Friday morning at some point, and you usually end up finishing Saturday morning, Saturday midday. And it's just continuous. And so the challenge is, what do you do between runs? Do you eat? Do you sleep? Do you just hang out, and so there's a Ragnar village where you can hang out. They have a huge bonfire and the whole thing. So it's a real community thing.
Yeah.
But in between, you're running anywhere from 15 to 20 miles in the day. In that period, day and night.
The day and night.
Yeah, yeah. You're running with headlamps, flashlights, whatever, in the middle of the night. So
how many people are participating in this?
So teams of 8, and the biggest field was 360 teams. So a lot of people.
That's a lot of people.
A lot of people. Yeah, it's like tent city, right? It's just like tents next to tents next to tents, and It's very communal and very fun, and it's nice because people have the same kind of attitude, outlook. You know, they're disciplined people. They're, you know, it's really fun. It's really fun.
So it's not like there's not like the party tents and stuff like that. I mean, people.
There are.
Okay,
there are.
all right.
Yeah, there are.
I guess
there are. Yeah.
If you have that many teams.
Yeah, I mean, basically with that many people, it's basically a whole, you know, it's a whole society. So you've got your partiers, you've got your, you know, scholarly people, and everybody else in between, right?
Yeah. How did you get connected with your team?
So that's a great question. So my brother, who's 12 years younger than I am, he did one of these in Texas, and he told me about it. And my brother-in-law and I, my brother-in-law lives in Richmond, not far from here. Mm-hmm. My sister's an IO psychologist, so he's married to my sister, the IO psychologist. She works at Virginia Commonwealth Medical School. But anyway, so when we heard about this, Mike and I, my brother-in-law, just looked at each other and was like, that sounds kind of fun. Because we're both runners. I've been, you know, into endurance sports and stuff. And so we put together a team of the three of my brother, my sister, and my brother, my sister, and me. So
mm-hmm.
3 siblings, and then we picked up two folks, and we did it. So then my older sister, because there's 4 of me, there's two boys, 2 girls in my family. So my older sister, she was turning 50 in Wisconsin, and it just turned out, just complete luck, that there was a Ragnar race in Wisconsin the weekend of her 50th birthday. So we all got together, made the trip, everybody made the trip, and descended on Wisconsin. The race was 2.5 hours away from her. And so we went and we did it. So the 4 siblings with the 4 spouses, we did this thing, and it was awesome. And we just felt so blessed that all of us are healthy enough to do that, and that we're married to people that are healthy enough and willing to do that. So it was a great experience. So the name of our team was. So the race was in Wausau, Wisconsin, and so the name of our team was "We Came, Wausau, We Conquered." But the subtitle of our team was "Worst 50th Birthday Party Ever." So it was fun.
That's good. What else have you done for endurance?
Well, my gosh, my dad used to get me up, and my dad used to get me up every morning at 5:30 in the morning. Growing up in Connecticut, rain, sleet, snow, whatever, and he was just run, and he would run around the high school track, right? And he would take me there, and he would drag me around this track. So I grew up hating running. And in college, I had a roommate that was leaving early. Todd, I'd never seen him alive before noon. And so there's one morning, he comes out of his room, you know, like at 7:30, and I was like, what are you doing? And he said, I'm going to go do this thing called a fun run with my girlfriend. It's a 5K. And I was like, he said, do you want to go? And I said, all right, I'll go. And so I went, I got hooked. And I went from 5Ks to 10Ks to half marathons to 50K to 50 milers. Then I got into triathlon and, you know, did all the distances in triathlon and so yeah.
What is the draw for you to push? Because you could do a lot. You could just stay in shape and go to the gym, right? Or you could I don't know have you thought about what it is to do endurance or to do these sorts of activities?
Yeah, I think the best way, I think I would distill it down to putting yourself in a position where your mind is telling you want to stop, but forcing yourself to go. And I think that kind of discipline and drive has really served me well in the rest of my life. You know, because sometimes life is uphill, and the last thing you want to do is go up that hill, but you got to get up it.
Yeah.
Right? So. Yeah.
So in your career, you've been in a lot of leadership positions.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm probably projecting a little bit about how it would be for me, but if I have this work ethic and this push, and even though I don't feel like it and it's hard, I'm going to do it anyway. some people are not wired that way. So that's interesting. If you hold yourself to some standard, have you felt like that has been challenging in being a leader?
You mean in terms of having people that don't?
Yeah, like when I imagine, like when your dad is dragging you around a track at 5:30 in the morning, you don't want to do it.
Right.
You know, what kind of techniques have you used to get people to go around the track?
That's awesome. So, you know, one of the things that I've learned is that everyone has their sweet spot in terms of talent, and their sweet spot in terms of level of dedication or discipline, or, you know, and really we just need to find what that is. And if it works within the mission that we have, then, you know, get on board and let's go, right? And if it doesn't, then I do try my best to help that person develop and gain those skills. And sometimes it's worked and sometimes it hasn't. And when it hasn't, it just comes down to, this is just not a good match for you, you know, or for us.
Yep.
And so now let me help you find a place where you can be successful. And the first time I had to deal with that was really difficult. I mean, that is probably one of the hardest things as a leader that you have to do, is when you come to that realization. And I was after that first time, I really gave it some thought, because it was really not a pleasant experience. And I came to that frame that I just described, that, you know, we all deserve to win, but we may just not win together. So let me try and help that happen. You know?
What's the best thing about being in a leadership position at APA or in general? What do you think?
You know, for me, it's really been finding and or cultivating talent, and then just being there to help channel it, help to support it, help to direct it.
Yeah.
And so it's really fun.
Yeah. And is the most challenging thing what you just described, which is when folks aren't in a position where they're thriving?
Yeah.
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 Okay.
That is.
Yeah.
That is.
Yeah.
And because that's just never, that's one thing that doesn't get easier, you know, like I think, you know, the second Ragnar is easier than the first, and the third Ragnar is easier than
Okay, what does Ragnar stand for?
You know what? I think it's the name of a Viking or something. I've looked it up, and I've used the Google.
Yeah.
And the Google keeps giving me a couple of different answers. So I don't know. You know, people
It's
thought
Ragnar.
is it Ragnarok? I go,
Yeah.
no, that's a good movie, but
No,
I don't think that's
it's just a thing.
It's just a thing.
It's just
yeah.
a thing.
But in terms of having to deal with people when they're in a spot where they're not thriving, that for me that hasn't gotten easier. What's gotten easier is help. You know, I've learned more tools in helping people, but it's always you know, because there's a certain confrontation about it. You know, it's never fun to tell somebody that they're not performing well.
Right.
Yeah.
You know how so many of us find ourselves in a classroom with no formal teaching experience?
Oh,
and
yeah.
That's how we start our careers.
Absolutely.
I wonder if leaders who don't have like business degrees or PhDs in leadership or whatever, if they often find themselves, I mean, rightfully so, they should be in the position. They probably have all these skills and qualities, but no training in leadership.
Absolutely. I mean, you've just hit the nail on the head. I really think that most leaders, I think it's kind of like the accidental, the accidental leader.
Yep.
Right. And I think what happens, and I'm sure you've experienced it because I know you well enough to know that this is the case. You know, if you're one of those people that is afflicted by that disease of not being able to say no, then and you have the secondary, you know, terrible symptom of everything that you do, you want to do it really, really well. Well, that just feeds a vicious cycle, right? Because, we asked Garth to do it. He said yes, and then he did it well. So guess who we're going to ask the next time, right? And so that gets around, and so you end up being put in positions of leadership no matter where you're doing it. Or at least, you know, in my sense, one of the things I've told my children and my students was, whatever you're doing at the time, strive for excellence. And even if it's not something that, that nothing has to be your lifelong career, but whatever position you find yourself in, whatever situation you find yourself in, do it to the best of your ability. And that goes for not just classes and jobs and careers, but relationships, just always strive for excellence. And then you can put things aside and move on to the next thing, right? So really funny story if you have time.
Yeah, of course.
So because of this affliction of mine, I'll give you the story and then I'll give you the backstory. So my youngest son, turned out to be a swimmer. Except for the triathlon stuff, I didn't know anything about competitive swimming like that. So we go to the first meeting. The coach says, we put on a couple of meets throughout the year, so we need parents to volunteer to help officiate the meets. And so you need to go, if you're interested, see me. So I went. I said, sure, I'm happy to help. So I'm at home and I'm going through this video thing on the video course on the TV of learning how to be a swim official, learning about all the strokes and all the fouls, what you look for, disqualifications and stuff like that. And so my son, the youngest, the swimmer, walks by and he sees what I'm doing and he says, "Hey, Pop, what are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, Coach Marlin said," yeah, his name is Marlin. Coach Marlin said that they need, parents to volunteer to be swim officials. So I decided I would do that. And he says, "Oh, okay." And he pauses and he looks at me and he says, "Do you think it would be possible for you not to become like the president of the swim officials?" And I was struck. I was like, "What?" And sure enough, it was like everything I'd done, whether it was within my church or the soccer association, I'd become president of the soccer association. I'd become moderator of the session, trustee of the church, department head of my job. Early on, I was a graduate program director. And then when I joined COGDOP, I became chair of COGDOP. It's just on and on and on. And I was like, wow, number one, I can't believe that he's noticed. And number two, it clearly had an effect, right?
Yeah. Had you noticed? Was that the first time you were like, wait, he's right?
I was just kind of moving on and doing my thing, anyway.
That's really interesting. Yeah. So
that's the accidental leader. And you're right. It's just like teaching.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't think I ever was taught how to teach, but that's a really big part of my job now.
Mm-hmm.
You've been taught a lot, and most of us, I think, get into this profession because we do love to teach.
Yep.
But then you realize that you don't really have any formal teaching experience or teaching training, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think we're getting better about that a little bit.
It seems like we're on our way.
Yeah.
So has mentoring been helpful to you along the way, either official or unofficial? Is there somebody you look to and you're like, they helped me to be a better leader, better in whatever capacity?
Yeah, I think that every person that has led me has taught me something. Mostly positive, but even, what's the saying I just heard not that long ago? You learn more from sinners than from saints. And so I've seen some really awesome examples of really bad leadership, and it's kind of like, okay,
note to self. Yeah,
exactly.
Don't do that.
Exactly.
Don't do that.
Note to self.
Your boss is Arthur Evans then?
Oh, there's no about it. He is my boss.
He's your boss.
Let me go on record. Arthur, you're my boss.
That's good. So I'm trying to understand now. President of APA is always different.
Yeah.
Right. So how does what's the relationship of president of APA to CEO? There's probably a CF. Is there a CFO as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the relation? How does that all structurally work?
So the president of APA is an elected position.
Yeah.
So that person is elected by the membership. and that's a 1-year term. And the president, as the name suggests, presides over the board of directors, and that's so they are basically the chairperson of the board, and the CEO is an actual member of the board of directors, right? And so so he's on the board of directors, and the board of directors are his boss.
Yep.
So they evaluate him. Arthur, or our CEO, is the boss of the chief financial officer, chief education, chief of practice, chief science.
Okay.
So all of those. Now, he is just now has put out a job application or job description for a deputy CEO that's going to help him not have so many direct reports. And so that'll kind of help him do his job a little better. Yeah.
And he's been here for
about a year and a half.
about a year and a half.
Yeah.
And who preceded him?
Norman Anderson.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess my question was getting to when new presidents come in, does that affect your work drastically year by year, or can it?
I mean, it can. It just depends on what the priorities or initiative of the president is. Currently, our presidents are able to champion an initiative. So, for instance, this year, Jessica Henderson Daniel, her initiative was citizen psychologist.
Yep.
I don't know if I congratulated you. I did earlier.
you.
We can rewind the tape and confirm that. But you just got that citation. So the Education Directorate staff helped create a curriculum for that kind of the citizenry of psychology and how being a citizen psychologist is important and how you might communicate that to different levels of education. So that surely had an impact on us. We worked very, very, very closely with Jessica. It was an enormous task. But then some may not fall within our directorate.
Right. The machine's still working.
Oh yeah.
Even in spite of a presidential initiative that comes in that might have some effect, but really your 11 areas are still doing what they're doing.
They're doing what they're doing,
yeah,
right?
Okay.
I mean, the thing that we're looking forward to is the new strategic plan that I think will help give everybody direction in terms of what the priorities of the association are, and so it's still being developed. So,
how often does a new strategic plan come out?
It depends. This one, so I think the first, and I was going to say don't quote me, but I'm being recorded. So, but I think the first one was passed in 2012.
Okay.
And so this is the second one.
And is that a CEO initiative?
It is.
Okay.
It is a CEO
So
initiative.
it makes sense that Arthur Evans is doing this now. He's a couple years in.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So that would have more of an effect on our work, than our elected president.
Sure. Yeah. So you said you grew up in Connecticut?
Oh yeah, born in New York, and then spent my formative years, I would say, in Connecticut.
Okay.
Getting dragged around Penny High School track.
And then, high school there?
No, actually, I left there right before high school and did high school in Texas.
In Texas?
Yeah.
So the family moved out to Texas?
Yeah, I formed early. I was formed by, age 14, 15. I was an early formed human being. I could see why you would thought that I would have done high school there. No.
Yeah.
In Texas, which was quite a culture shock coming from the Northeast.
Yep.
Yeah.
What part of Texas?
In Houston.
Okay.
Yeah, in Houston. Yeah, northeast Houston, in a town called Humble.
Humboldt.
Humble.
Okay.
Yeah. Spelled with an H.
Hold on. In Saskatchewan, there was a town called Humboldt.
Oh.
I wonder if they're spelled the same way. With the wage. Humboldt.
No, I know Humboldt. I haven't been there, but I know that.
Okay.
I know that word. I know that town. But no, it's Humble. Just like humble. Being humble, being
it's humble.
humbled,
Okay.
And so...
But it's humble.
But it's humble, yeah.
Okay.
So coming down there from the Northeast, I said humble because I read English.
Yep.
And I was, very quickly rebuked by my pronunciation of it. And I said, oh, so is this humble high school? That did not go over
No,
well.
I bet it didn't.
No.
You had difficulty making friends on the first day, I guess.
I did.
So now, when you're in high school, well, here, a couple questions. Did you take any AP classes while you were there?
That is a fantastic question. I don't think we had AP classes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just interest.
This was 19. I'm going to age myself. This was 1978. 1977, and it was Humble High School. So we may not have had any AP. Now, what we did have, we had L, M, and K classes, and K was like the honors classes.
Okay.
Right, and so I was taking all honors classes. In fact, when I went to Texas, I took a placement test because they were doing these things called modules. So there was into the self-paced type of education where you could just go through all these English language modules, or not English language, English. Like comp,
English. Comp, yep.
Comp. So you could do modules for that. You could do modules for math. Then you could do modules for science. And so I went in and I tested out of almost everything for ninth grade. So I was taking classes with 10th graders, and which did not help me in my my search for friends.
Yeah.
No, but I found some great friends. I did, lifelong friends.
So you were you always good at school?
I was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did your parents do for a living, and what kind of education did they get?
Yes, my mom and dad are both from Colombia, South America. Mm-hmm. My dad is from the coast, and he did high school. My mom is from Bogota, and she did, I think, a year of college. After being excused from the convent, actually.
Really?
Yeah. So I was in an elementary school in a Catholic school in Connecticut, and they were talking about convent, and the whole journey of becoming a nun and becoming a priest and stuff, and obviously it was catechism class, and I thought that I got excited because I was like, oh, so I raised my hand to share with the nun, I said, my mom used to be in a convent.
How did that go over?
Crickets.
Yeah, I bet.
I mean, the kids didn't know any better, but she was like, okay, thank you for sharing.
Next.
And next, yeah.
So, interesting.
But anyway, so they came here separately. They met in New York. They actually met in New York. So my mom was in town, had gotten into town and was wanted to mail her first letter home from being here, and so she asked somebody on the street about a post office or something, and so this person that she asked said, you want to send us to Colombia? There's a Colombian boy that works in the mailroom in the Scandinavian Airline Systems building right here, and that's how they met. That was it, as they say.
Yeah. So, not college educated then. You're first generation.
I'm first generation. Yeah.
But it sounds like there was some expectation or work ethic, something expected of you.
Yes.
Probably by your folks.
Education was top, the top priority. I mean, there was no question that we were going to go to college, right? So I'm the firstborn. So I got my PhD in psychology with concentration in behavioral neuroscience, right? So I went that route. My my younger sister, 5 years younger than I am, she has her master's in social work and public health from Columbia University. To this day, she says if she had to do over again, she would have gotten a PhD in epidemiology, because that's basically what she does. And she's very talented. And then my third is my sister. She's 11 years younger than I am. She's the IO psychologist. And then the baby of the family is actually the failure of the family. He's an attorney. So that's our inside family joke.
Of course.
Yeah.
Okay, so what brings you guys to Texas then?
My dad's job.
Okay.
So my dad was with my dad started at Scandinavian Airline Systems when he got to the country as a dishwasher. And he worked himself from the dishwasher to the mailroom to sales, and really just did phenomenally well, and then got recruited away from Scandinavian Airline Systems by Avianca, which is the Colombian Airlines. And so he became a regional manager, a regional manager in Hartford in Connecticut. And so that got us to Connecticut, and then they moved him to become a greater, like a bigger territory down in Houston.
Is it because Continental was down there, or is there a lot of airline?
Well, Avianca was flying in and out of there, but also it was really just cultivating, the Southwest. And all that, all that business. Yeah. So there is a huge thriving Colombian community in Houston. We didn't live in it.
Yeah.
My parents took us out to the suburbs. Again, they were just very focused on making sure we had the best, the best that they could offer. And then he left Avianca and opened up his own travel agency, and that's where they retired from, was from their own business.
Wow. Why did they come to the United States?
For opportunity. Yeah, for opportunity. They just didn't feel like they had that there, and they came here, and they were actually American citizens. I think it's been maybe 10 years since they became American citizens.
Wow.
So it's an immigrant story.
Yeah. Very cool.
Which means a lot in these days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you, where do you go to college?
University of Texas at Austin. But I started in college, community college.
Oh.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because I wanted to be a rock star. So
that's right. This sounds familiar.
Which was my parents, I just told you, they were really pushing education, not rock stardom. And so we compromised and said, I want to stay with the band, but I'll go to school while I'm with the band. So
yeah.
So
well, now you have to answer some questions about the band. How did the band come to be?
When I finally made a friend, we just Don May, who's actually a songwriter for Curb Records. He and I hit it off, and we both had a lot of interest in music, and we just got together, and basically our weekends were spent, playing in music. And then we said, hey, let's put a band together, and we put a band together, and then we played, clubs in Houston as high schoolers, and
original stuff. You covering stuff?
Both.
Yeah.
Both.
What genre?
Rock.
Okay.
Yeah. Kind of a Def Leppard-y.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Were you covering Def Leppard?
We did cover Def Leppard. Uh-huh. We covered Styx, Journey.
Oh man. Rush.
We did do some Rush.
Oh man.
Yeah. We do Kansas. Remember Kansas?
Oh yeah.
We did Carry On Our Wayward Son.
Uh-huh.
So we were we.
Oh, you got that falsetto going.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So I think the most important question right now is where's the nearest karaoke bar?
It's on King Street.
that's how you guys unwind here at APA.
That's right.
So you probably started this at 16 or something like that. And
Yeah, I think we started around 15.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. 15.
Did you guys do an album or anything?
No, we didn't. Actually, no, we didn't. We didn't do an album. I mean, that was a different time. You know,
Yeah.
now it's amazing. You know, I have sons that are in the arts, and it's amazing what they can do in a room like this, right?
That's right.
With the technology is unbelievable. So,
Yeah.
But we did get a song on the radio.
Oh, nice.
So that was cool.
Yeah.
That's kind of neat to be. Especially, it's kind of like when you're in the car and you hear it on the car radio. It's like, wow, that's cool.
It's funny. I share that with you.
Yeah.
I was in a band.
Tell me about
and
that.
I remember the first time I ever heard us. We have probably a very similar story to you. We were a funk band, though we weren't rock.
I like that.
Yeah, and I remember. I can actually remember exactly where I was in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. I was about to drive over the Broadway Bridge, and you couldn't ever predict when a song was going to come on, right? It was
exactly.
It's radio,
Right.
So I remember it coming on. It was the greatest experience.
It really was.
It was quickly fleeting though, because didn't quite shoot to number one, but it was a lot of fun. That's a memory that you can't really share with many people, right?
Yeah, I know,
that's
true.
Hearing that come on, but so you do the community college thing, and then does the band decide not to pursue?
Yeah. The band just kind of falls apart.
The band fell apart.
Yeah, the band fell apart, and so I went to UT Austin and ended up getting in a band there, because the drummer from the band in Houston went to UT, and he got in a band, and then he said, "Hey, you want to come out? We you could be the lead singer for our band." And I was like, "Okay." So I did that for a while, but then it was like, I'm really trying to get, my grades, and this was just becoming a real nightmare. And so that was one of the most awkward meetings, was telling Circuit that I was quitting the band because they had plans.
Circuit is the name of the band, not the name of your friend.
No.
Okay,
no,
good. Yeah.
No, the band. Yeah. So telling Circuit that I was leaving the band, and they said, "You're going to regret this decision for the rest of your life."
Oh no.
Yeah.
And it's hung over you till this day.
I know.
They might be huge someday.
I keep looking for them, and but now now they're the age of the comeback tours.
That's right.
But they never were there, so
yeah,
it would have to be a debut. Right?
That's right. They can go with who are the Hotel California guys? The Eagles.
The Eagles. Yeah,
they're always
sure.
playing those guys on the same 5 songs or 10 songs or whatever.
Right.
Were you a Psi Beta member in community college or no?
I was not.
No.
No.
Yeah, I don't know why I thought to ask that, but
no, I was. I didn't know about it.
Yeah.
I mean, you miss out on a lot of stuff as a first generation, right?
Yeah.
You just don't
Feel the same
know.
way.
You don't know what you don't know.
Yep.
You don't know. Because you don't know what you don't know, you don't ask questions.
Yep.
And unless somebody just grabs you by the collar and says, "Hey, come here and let me show you something," you kind of float through, and and that was kind of my experience.
So what was your undergraduate degree in?
In psychology.
In psychology.
Yeah.
Okay. And at what point did you transfer in as a major then?
I transferred in. As a major. I
Yeah.
mean, I started off there, and I actually wanted to go to medical school, but I got recruited out of a summer biological psychology course to work in a lab. And so I started slicing up hippocampi and doing experiments on learning and memory. And I was like, would somebody pay me to do this? I just thought it was so great.
So you loved the biological side of behavior.
I loved the biological side of behavior. I loved being able to ask questions and designing experiments to be able to answer them.
Yeah.
That was like so cool. So that's what I did for a long time.
Were you just always curious about biology or behavior and or both, or did you not know that until you actually were learning about it, that this is a good fit for you?
So it's interesting. I was always curious about the brain, right? It was always the conundrum that I was using the brain to think about the brain was very fascinating to me.
Brain explosion.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I was just intrigued by it. It's like, what is this thing called consciousness, and how do we process all this, and how can this be, right? And so I was really thinking about going to medical school to be a neurologist or a brain surgeon. But just because I didn't know what I didn't know, so then I found out, wait a minute, you can actually do research and ask those questions, because, when you're a clinician, although I'm going to give you a big caveat here, my thinking at the time was, you're a clinician, there are problems that are coming in, you fix them. I didn't know about, you could do an MD, PhD, or you could be an MD and still be a clinical researcher, right? But I didn't know that, and I didn't know to ask, and nobody told me, right? So, it's interesting. What would you do then, if you knew
what you know now?
What you know now,
Yeah.
right? But yeah. So, but it's worked out okay.
It's all right. So you get your undergraduate degree, and then what's next?
So what's next is I met my wife the April of my last semester. And
also a student?
Also a student.
Uh-huh.
And I met her, and it was love at first sight. I mean, like, literally. And
for both of you, or just for you?
Well, just for me. No. She's still trying to get away. No, I think it was mutual.
Yeah.
I think she would say that.
Yeah.
I don't know if she'd mean it, but I think she would say it. But yeah, I had plans to go off to graduate school, but she was still in school. She still had, at least a year and a half, 2 years to finish. And so I decided to put it off. And my mentor, the lab that I was working in, he actually gave me a job, like a paid job, to stay in the laboratory and keep working on hippocampal learning and habituation experiments, and so I was slicing brains, training animals, doing surgeries, implanting cannulas, on and on and on. And I also worked at a residential treatment center. It's called the Oaks, which was one of the Brown schools back in the day, where there were residential treatment centers for youth, and a lot of them were there by court order, But anyway, so I worked at both. I worked both jobs, and it was great. And then I joined another band.
Well, you had all that time on your hands.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, so that's what I did. And then when Lenny was finishing up, and I was working in the laboratory, Abe Amsel, who's a member, he's passed away, but he's a National Academy of Science member. He came and said, you should apply to graduate school here, because I think it's time, and you've got some really good work that you're doing here. And so I did, and I got in there, and so I ended up getting my graduate degree at University of Texas at Austin as well. So
wow,
stayed there. Yeah.
So that was it.
That was it.
Okay.
Yeah.
PhD.
And then I did my postdoc at Medical University of South Carolina.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. First job after that, after you were done with school?
Baylor University.
That's it?
Yeah.
You were there for how long?
18 years, which
Wow.
flew by. Yeah. I was department chair 8 years into the job, or 9 years into the job.
Yeah.
So half my time there, I was department head.
Yeah.
Well,
that's not surprising from your son's perspective, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. What was the transition like out of the classroom into being administrator? Do you remember that?
So I never left the classroom.
Oh, you never left the classroom?
No, and that's because I loved the classroom. I loved the students, and so even as a department chair, I know people thought I was crazy, but so we had 2 team-taught courses. One was Intro to Psych, and one was Intro to Neuroscience. And so I taught a quarter of those 2 classes, and then would teach another course in the spring. And so the fall semester, I had those 2 quarter classes, and then I would teach 2 quarter classes and 1 in the spring. And then occasionally I would teach a graduate seminar on some topic that students were clamoring for. And so,
yeah. Has that been hard? Do you miss teaching?
You know, I as much as I loved teaching, I'm just in a different space.
Yep.
You know, so I don't really. I mean, I do love, like, I've gone to Georgetown, you know, George Washington, given guest lectures. I do speak a lot.
Right.
You know, as part of my job. Ooh, was that loud?
No, it's
okay.
good. Yeah.
I do speak a lot, so that's a lot like teaching, and I enjoy that. You know, kind of that's public speaking.
Right, and there is an amount of teaching in your job, I suspect. Right.
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so it's
so I still feel connected.
Yeah,
and I still hear from students. It's one of my favorite things. You know, I still hear from former soccer players. You know, they still say, "Hey, coach, I'm doing this, I'm doing that." So.
Wait, you coach soccer too?
Yeah, well, you know, I started in the soccer association because my oldest son, 5 years old, I coached his team, and then I went from that all the way up to president. But I coached. I was part of I co-founded a select soccer team in Waco because the select, you know, that competitive travel teams. There was one in Waco, but it was really pay to play because it was very expensive.
Right.
Because they had to, you know, these coaches are trying to make a living doing this, and so a couple of guys and me, we got together and thought, you know, I wonder if we could do one of these with very little cost, just volunteer coaches, and we could do that. So we did, called it the Waco Blast, and it was fantastic. We took this for the first team that I was the coach. The first team we took from unranked to 7th in the state in a matter of 3 years.
That's
2
fun.
years. 2 years. It was fantastic,
And
and it was because we were able to get those kids that never in a million years could have afforded to play travel soccer. But because we had the model that we did, they were able to, and they were fantastically talented. So again, as their leader, I just basically supported them, taught them, put them through, did a lot of team building and character building. And they were just phenomenal.
How did you guys get the funding to get them around to different tournaments and stuff?
Well, I mean, it wasn't free, but it was very low cost.
Right, because they weren't paying you all for what you were doing.
Right, and then the parents would pay for the tournaments.
Okay.
So we were very low cost. Really didn't cover all our costs, but we had fundraisers and such. But yeah, it worked out. And I will tell you that team no longer exists because they got absorbed by the Dallas Texans, which is one of the country's largest competitive soccer mega teams. I mean, there's Dallas Texans all over the country. But because we had such talented teams, they got absorbed.
Well, that's kind of fun.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Fantastic. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I don't want to. Well, we actually are a little bit over time, but that's just fun. That means we had a good chat. Final questions. I'm trying to think about what they are right now. I'm just going to edit this out because I'm going to.
Sure. So you don't really prepare for these.
Not at all. No, it's
good.
funny. I can't. I don't have the time to.
Right.
Right. All right, so I have a couple.
Because you're saving kids in Thailand. I mean,
it's a little romantic, but yeah, okay. So just a couple more questions. One very serious. How many hours of sleep do you get a night?
That is such a fantastic question. I just started reading the book Why Do We Sleep? I highly recommend it.
Okay.
It was given to me by a friend out of concern.
Oh no! What have you learned?
I've learned that I better get to sleep.
Yeah.
Sleep is very important. I knew that. You know, and I've been guilty of saying the terrible saying, "I'll sleep when I'm dead."
Yeah.
By living like that, that'll be sooner than later. So I'm trying to get more sleep, and my Garmin tells me that I'm averaging about six hours a night.
Well,
that's not bad.
It's not bad.
No, I was in the 4 to 5 hour range. Yeah.
I
So,
don't think I will ever be at the top of my professional game because I'm an 8-hour guy.
oh no, I disagree after reading this book. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll see. It's a good book, though.
Oh, it's a fantastic
Okay.
book. Yeah.
Okay. And I think just maybe a reflection as we end, because I think I first met you at SNAP. I think you were at the Summit for the National Assessment of Psychology.
Yes.
And we were in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And you showed up to that. And I think... and then you also showed up, I think, to Utah for the high school summit,
I did.
right?
I was there as well.
And now that I know that you're in charge of like 11... I mean, just so many different things. I think it's just really impressive that you do show up to this. It makes us feel supported. So I want to say thank you for that.
Well, thank you for saying so. You're very welcome.
Yeah, and I know that...
it's important work.
Well, thanks. And Tony Puente showed up, I think, with you, or
he
maybe
did.
separately.
In Utah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, in Utah. And I don't know how things have been in the past, the relationship between STP or undergraduate education and your office or the broader APA, but I feel really, really supported. And I feel like, you guys have a lot going on. So for us to feel that is meaningful. So thanks again.
Well, that's awesome.
For showing up. And, you have a lot on your plate. I appreciate that you take time to have conversations with us when we're around.
Sure.
Because you have, 16 groups here at any given time, any given weekend.
That's right.
And you could be sleeping or running or something like that. So,
I know it.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time as well. And
well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been good. And I'll see you at the karaoke bar.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right. I'll warm up the mic for you.